Yo guys, what is up? Max in our First Descendant video, and today we're talking about all of the classes or characters available in the First Descendant. Now, we're going to start by talking about the first 3 starting classes to give you an idea of which one you may want to start the game with, and then we'll talk about the ones you unlock later down the line. Now, I wanted to make this video, one, because the beta is in 2 days, so I know a lot of people are going to be trying it out and getting some impressions and opinions on the game, and 2, to get the other classes, you're going to need to farm for them and invest time and resources into building the other characters. And so I wanted to give you guys my opinions on which ones I like the most, which ones I had the most fun, which ones I thought were the strongest, so that you can know possibly which ones you want to work towards building and farming so that you can play them in this beta. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's get right into it. So the starting 3 classes are Lepic, Ajax, and Viessa. Lepic is your assault soldier archetype, Ajax is your tank brawler archetype, and Viessa is a ice AoE controller. And I started with Lepic. I was kind of torn between Viessa and Lepic, but I really enjoyed Lepic. Your first ability is a grenade throw that will do a bunch of damage to enemies, and as you level up, your ability damage will increase. Your 2 ability is a duration based ability where you'll enter a powered up mode where your abilities will do more damage, and your grenades in this mode will have a added burn effect, so they'll burn enemies. Your 3rd ability is a traction or gravity surge that will pull enemies in, and then you can pull enemies in, activate your 1 and your 2 to add fire to your grenades and just absolutely explode whole groups. And then your 4th ability gives you an arm cannon to just blast away at things, and your passive is when you die or you would receive fatal damage, you actually don't, and you can stay alive for 5 seconds. I really enjoyed this character. And next up we have Viessa. Next up, we've got Viessa, who is your cryo or cold damage dealer, more of a controller character. And in order to understand Viessa, we need to talk about how cold damage works in this game. So cold damage, or the freezing effect, is called Ice Shackle in this game. And the more stages of Ice Shackle that you inflict on an enemy, the more frozen they become. At stage 4, they are 100% frozen and cannot attack you or move. Now, your first ability, your second ability, your third ability, and your 4th ability all inflict Ice Shackle and can increase the stages of Ice Shackle when you apply them to enemies. Your passive is when you have enemies at Ice Shackle level 2 or higher, aka they're slowed by 40%, they're gonna chain ice spheres in between enemies that will chain damage between enemies. So basically, you do a bunch of cold abilities, enemies will get frozen, they'll chain damage between each other, they won't be able to attack you. I found this class to be extremely strong. Your 1 ability is a Ice Beam that will deal explosive damage and inflict Ice Shackle, and if you already have Ice Shackle on enemies, it'll increase the stages by 2 when inflicting damage. You've got Frost Fog, which is a movement speed ability. It'll also give you shield and apply ice sheets to the ground. Enemies that touch the ice sheets will get Ice Shackle, and if anything touches these that already have Ice Shackle on them, they're going to go up by 2 stages. Next up, you've got Ice Wave, which will do a AoE, a wide AoE, ice wave, exactly what it says. And when you hit enemies with this, if they've got Ice Shackle effect, you increase by 2 stages upon damage. And then your 4th ability is a Blizzard, which will increase your Ice Shackle effect up to stage 3 or 4 and does a bunch of explosive damage and freezes enemies. Basically, you spam a whole bunch of abilities, enemies will be frozen and they won't be able to fight you. This class was very strong. Next up, we've got Ajax, who is your tank/brawler class. In order to understand Ajax, you need to understand his passive, which is Void Vault. Basically, when you take damage, you store it as void energy, and the more damage that you take, the more your attack increases. When your void energy reaches 100%, you're going to consume 50% of your void energy to be able to use enhanced skills, and all of your skills have extra effects whenever you are in this enhanced skill state or whenever you reach your void energy of 100%. Basically, you take damage to dish out more damage. Now, your first ability is going to be a barrier. It's called Reverse Door. It's going to have the properties of your HP and defense, so the more you bump that up, the better this actual door or barrier will be. However, what's super cool is this barrier will actually store void energy for you, so instead of you having to get hit, the door can get hit. And when you activate this when you have full void energy and it becomes enhanced, it'll actually reflect damage back to enemies, which is super cool. Next up, we've got Void Walk. When you hit the ground after jumping, you inflict damage onto enemies, and then when it's actually enhanced, it increases your current shield by 40%. So basically, it's a movement ability, but when you're enhanced, it'll also give you some more shield. Next up, we've got Expulsion, which strikes enemies with a big knockback that are nearby you, and if you're enhanced, it increases the range and the radius and increases your shield. So basically, you're going to want to be getting up into enemies' faces, taking as much damage as possible, and then being able to use these enhanced skills. And then your fourth ability, your like quote-unquote ultimate, creates a dome all around you as opposed to just a door that will sap up void energy for you. And when your enhanced shield is hit, if you activate this with an enhanced shield, it reflects damage back to 60% of Ajax's defense. Very cool. Now we're into the characters that you need to grind to unlock, and we're starting with one of my favorites, the poison DPS character, Freyna. Now, Freyna is all about damage over time, poison and demonic damage, and your passive is relatively simple. Basically, if you poison an enemy with a skill, if you hit them with the gun or whatever, you're going to increase the damage that you deal. Now, your first ability is Venom Baptism. Basically, you're going to throw a poison pool on the ground. Enemies that walk into it will be poisoned, and if they die from this poison or you kill them, they have a chance to explode and basically spread that poison damage. Next up, we've got Defense Mechanism, which is going to give you the Armor of Plague. When you're in this Armor of Plague state, you're going to increase your defense, and enemies attacking you have a chance to get Room Zero Trauma, which is like a demonic attack poison kind of thing. The way it's worded is quite confusing, but basically this is going to give you more defense and a chance to inflict poison to enemies that attack you when you have this armor on. Next up, we've got Decomposed Poison, which is your third ability. This is quite similar in my experience to your first ability. However, this leaves a lingering poison pool. So a lot of times I was like playing a defense objective, and I would leave this decomposed poison right before the entrance or right at the entrance. It lasts for 12 seconds, and enemies that run through it would become poisoned and leave poison footprints as they move, which means that not only would I be able to like block an area with this poison pool, but if enemies ran through it, they would carry more poison pools around the room that other enemies could walk into and then also become poisoned. And then lastly, your ultimate ability or your fourth ability is called Dead Room, which returns to your original weapon. In this case, when I was using it, it would always bring out an assault rifle. Even if I didn't have one equipped, I would bring out an assault rifle that had poison bullets already loaded into it, and you'd get to kind of like spam this poison AR that would deal poison damage and spread to enemies for a duration. So basically, you pull out this special weapon and shoot a bunch of poison bullets at enemies, and that poison can spread, and you're all about status effect damage. I found the status effect damage to be quite strong. I didn't find the plague armor to give me a ton of survivability. I was dying a decent amount in the harder content on this character, but the damage was pretty awesome. Next up, we've got Sharen. It does not have the most intimidating name. Sharen is your assassin trickster. Like if Freyna was the Technomancer from Outriders, Sharen is the trickster from Outriders. Your passive is going to increase your damage that you deal to enemies that are not targeting you. And I'll get to the other part of her passive in a second once we read through these skills, so it makes more sense. So your first ability is an electric slash called Cutoff Beam. Basically, it hits enemies in a sweeping radius with electrocution effect damage or electric damage. Your next ability is Active Camouflage. This turns you invisible for 30 seconds. When attacking or using skills, Active Camouflage state ends immediately. So you can run around invisible, but as soon as you attack, you're going to lose this invisibility. Whenever it ends, you enter Ambush Mode. In ambush mode, your damage is increased for your next attack by 140%. And if you kill an enemy in this ambush mode, your active camouflage resets, so you can go back invisible. Now, there is a cooldown on this reset, but basically, after you exit, you're going to get increased damage. And if you can actually get a kill in these 3 seconds with your increased damage, you're going to reset your cooldown of your invisibility. So you can do a lot of like cool stuff with this character. Your third ability is called Shock Nuts, which launches built-in explosives forward from your arm, which inflict shock damage and actually stun enemies. So you can use this to stun enemies before you come and like slash them up. And then lastly, your ultimate is called Lights Out, which is a very cool looking ability. You can target up to 10 enemies and then you throw electric knives at them. This character was very, very fun to play. Not my favorite of them, but very fun to play. Next up, we've got Blair, who's probably my second favorite character in this. Blair is the fire pyromancer character. If we're doing the Outriders thing, this is the pyromancer. And your kind of kit revolves around stoves, which sounds a little bit weird, but Blair is actually a cook, and he talks about cooking while you're playing with him. So his passive is called Flame Manipulation. When you're attacking enemies who are on fire or burning, your critical hit damage is increased by 30%. And for each stove that you have on the field, your critical hit chance is increased. So just your passive is going to give you a bunch of critical hit chance and a bunch of critical hit damage. Now, what the heck is a stove? So your first ability is called Stove On, which throws a flame puddle on the ground, which is a stove. And so you can throw out this stove, burn a bunch of enemies, shoot at them. You're going to get crit chance and crit damage while doing so. Your second ability is called Stove Off. It retrieves all the stoves on the battlefield, restores your mana, and also, if you retrieve 3 stoves, it increases your defense by 200% for 5 seconds, which is very nice. So you're going to be kind of spamming your one, putting out a bunch of stoves. That's going to increase your damage against enemies who are burning, increase your crit chance. They'll be burning, and then if you need them back, you take them back. You're going to get mana back and defense. Your third ability is called Flambe. This is basically a constant channeling fire beam that you can hit enemies with and burn them. It doesn't have any interactions with stoves. And then your fourth ability is called Chef Star, which is a big fireball. It throws a large fireball forward, which can split into 3 small fireballs. A stove is created on the ground when small fireballs explode, so you can make 3 stoves with just this, and do a bunch of burn damage. Relatively like simple character, but it's got some cool mechanics, and you can just like burn a bunch of stuff, bring them all back, get your mana back, get your defenses, and you can very much build this character around both the fire effect and also crit chance and crit damage, which felt really good to play. Next up, we've got Bunny, who's probably my favorite character to play. The way that this character works is you move around, and every meter that you move, you charge up electricity, which is Bunny's passive. Now, electricity is going to juice up the damage of your other abilities. So basically, you need to move in order to be able to do damage with this character, and the more you're moving around, the more damage your abilities are going to do. And we're starting with our first ability, Electro Orb, which is a very fast attack. It's going to summon an electrical orb above you and hit enemies with electricity damage that is increased per point of, or per percentage of electricity that you have. Next up, we've got Runaway. This was really fun ability. This is going to allow you to only sprint in Joyride mode. You enter Joyride mode, you can only sprint, and your sprint speed is increased by 50%, and you gain bonus electricity for every meter that you move. This consumes your mana when you're running around in it, so the more you run around, the more mana you're going to consume, but it'll kind of juice up the damage of your other abilities because it'll give you so much electricity just from sprinting around. You can kind of keep this active. Next up, we've got Pulsar. Pulsar is going to spawn electricity waves around you that are going to be doing more damage the more electricity that you have on yourself. So basically, you can have this Pulsar on that's going to be spamming electric waves on you while you're in Joyride mode. So what I found myself doing is I would sprint to a group of enemies, and by the time I'm there in that pack, the Pulsar waves have just killed all of them, and then I'm sprinting to the next pack of enemies, and then they're dying to the Pulsar. And you definitely do want to have like a good like mana economy on this character because you're very ability focused. But I had a lot of fun. And then lastly, your fourth ability, your ultimate, is Circuit Breaker, which is going to give you a channeled electric beam that is going to drain electricity and only ends when your electricity runs out. So you can store up a bunch of electricity, and then you pull out this big beam for big damage, and it'll use up all your electricity and do a ton of damage to enemies. Next up, we've got Jayber, who is a character that I found myself using a lot for the endgame void battles, which are boss fights, particularly because you have a healing turret and because your passive increases your damage. Now, Jayber revolves around having 2 turrets out. You've got an attack turret or an assault turret and a medical turret, and if you have both deployed at the same time, your passive is going to increase the damage that you deal by 20%. Your first ability is an assault turret. It'll shoot enemies, and it has an HP equivalent to a percentage of your HP. In this case, it was like 40%, 47% of your HP. So the more HP that you pump into, the more HP that your turrets will have. Your second ability is a medical turret, which will pulse out waves of healing. You need to be close to it to get healed, and it can heal you and your teammates. And your third ability is kind of where it gets interesting. Your third ability is a multi-purpose gun. Basically, you pull out this like multi-tool, and you can shoot enemies with it. You can shoot your turrets with it. I recommend shooting your turrets with it. When you shoot your turrets with this multi-purpose tool gun, it is going to enhance them and increase the damage that those turrets do, or it'll increase the healing that the healing turret will do. And you get multiple shots with this thing. You get 3 shots, so you can fire them at the turrets and basically enter them into enhanced mode to give you more healing and more damage. You definitely want to put up those 2 turrets and then pump them up with the tool. And then the last ability, your ultimate, was actually very neat. It's called Total Recall, which recalls all of your summoned turrets. Upon retrieval, turrets fire 3 fragments to inflict enemies with skill attack damage times 100 or times 100% explosive damage for 10 seconds. After using Total Recall, you enter Overhaul mode. In your Overhaul mode, your summoned turret's already in its enhanced mode. So basically, you're going to want to summon all your turrets. When you recall those turrets, they're going to do a bunch of damage to enemies on their way back of summoning. And then when you get those turrets back to summon again after you recall them, then they're going to already be in their enhanced mode. You don't even need to shoot the multi-purpose tool at them. This character, just kind of utility wise, was really nice. Not the most fun character to play, but I found it very helpful for like the bossing. And last but not least, we have Gley, who is actually one of the coolest and most mechanical classes that, if played poorly, you will get destroyed, but if played well, I think is going to be one of the strongest, if not possibly could be the strongest character in the game. Now, Gley is very interesting because Gley does not have any shield, and you are a full HP based character. Your passive death sensor allows you to, when you kill an enemy, that they drop life spheres. Life spheres will restore some of your HP, and whenever you do pick up a life sphere, you get 1 power of life. You can have up to 10 powers of life, and those will empower your abilities. So basically, you kill enemies to get HP, and you pick up those life spheres to power yourself up. Once again, you do not have any shield with this character. Now, your first ability is called Berserk, which is going to basically enter you into a Berserk mode. In this Berserk mode, all of your other abilities have different effects, mainly that they're more aggressive. And this is going to consume 15% of your HP immediately and decrease all HP recovery effects by 80%. So basically, while in Berserk mode, you're very vulnerable because you're going to get 80% less healing. But with our next ability, Life Extraction, when you trigger this, you're going to recover your HP by 20% for every 1 enemy around you in an 8-meter radius, and it's going to consume 4 power of life. Now, in Berserk mode, this is going to deal a bunch more damage to enemies, but basically this is kind of how you keep yourself alive. You run up to a group of enemies, you want to be close. This is kind of like a shotgun character, and you're going to drain a bunch of their HP to heal you, and if you're in Berserk mode, you'll do even more damage to those enemies. Next up, we've got Requiem. Requiem inflicts different effects depending on your state. In a normal state, it'll heal you a little bit. In your Berserk mode, for 5 seconds in a radius around you, bullets are not consumed. There is like power ammo in this game, aka snipers, rocket launchers, shotguns that can be a little bit ammo consuming. So the fact that you have an ability on command where you can just cast it and not consume ammo, spam some sniper shots, spam some rocket shots, is extremely strong. And then lastly, your fourth ability, Nosferatu, summons a power weapon. Basically, Nosferatu is going to do different effects in different modes. So if you're in Berserk mode, it's basically got like 45% extra damage. This will also consume 15% of your max HP. But basically, this character, you're going to want to be really aggressive, play up close to enemies, drain their life, kill them to pick up those life orbs, be in Berserk mode to do a ton more damage. And if you've got a friend who's playing as a healing character, you can really like enable this character to do some pretty crazy things. Definitely one of the cooler mechanic-wise characters. that's going to do it for our overview of the classes. For your starting class, I'd recommend Lepic or Viessa. I found Ajax not to be very useful because the game is so easy that you don't need to like be a tank. You just kill things quickly and you'll level up faster. So I'd recommend either of those two, whatever suits your fancy. For like general play through this game, once again, it's pretty easy. You can play through whatever character you want to be. However, for the end game, I do have some recommendations. Now, the first end game activity are void battles, which are boss battles. It's you versus a boss. There's not really many adds, and so because there's not a lot of adds, a lot of the abilities that work against ads or that are good for like AoE clear simply don't work against these bigger bosses. Like Gley is pretty much useless. Freyna with their poison abilities, still cool, but like not super great. So my recommendations to pick up if you want to grind out those void battles, because they give a ton of resources, mods, money, everything. I think they're going to be one of the best actual farms in the game. If you want to do those, I'm going to recommend Sharen for your invisibility to ambush and increase your damage against targets that are not looking at you. Jayber, I think, is going to be pretty solid because Jayber's got the attack and health turrets. I think either of those will be great off for the void battles. And then for the endless survival, you actually have a lot more options. Any character will work fine there. I do have some recommendations though. Bunny's really good because the endless survivals, you need to kill enemies quickly and pick up resources quickly, so Bunny's movement speed is absolutely massive there. Blaine, the fire character, with the defense and just leaving areas pocketed, especially when you're in an area for a long time, having areas just on fire is really, really helpful. Gley there with their survivability, because there's going to be so many ads and you're killing enemies so quickly. Gley is really strong. At the end of the day, you can play whatever you want as long as you grind them out, but I do want to give some recommendations for the different activities and the different starters. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. The First Descendant beta, now that I'm like at the end of recording this, it actually comes out technically today/tomorrow. So let me know what character you're going to be hopping into, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.